If you quit before your first $100,000, you'll miss the part of your life when your money finally starts running faster than you do. That's not motivational fluff. That's the math and the psychology teaming up against you in the beginning and handing you an unfair advantage later. Tonight, I'm going to show you why the first 100,000 feels brutally hard, why the next 100,000 is surprisingly easy, and exactly how to cross that line, even if you've tried and stalled before. And if you already know that this is your year, comment "I'll hit 100K" below, so I can pin the $0 to 100K checklist for you after the video. Let's be honest about the early game. You work, you save a little, you invest a little, and it looks like nothing is happening. The market sneezes and your entire month's contribution vanishes in a red day. You feel like you're pouring water into a bucket with a hole. What you're experiencing is the dead zone of compounding. Not because compounding isn't real, but because the base you're compounding on is still thin. And numbers betray how your brain works. We humans feel progress when we can see it, preferably in big chunks. Early on, your invested base is so small that most of the growth still comes from your contributions. And that's demoralizing because you're exchanging life hours for inches on a chart. It's not your fault. It's physics meeting psychology. Your income is limited at first, your savings rate is fragile, and the market can be noisy. So you look at the chart and think, I'm bad at this. You're not bad at this. You're early at this. There's a switch that flips when your invested base becomes heavy enough to throw off annual growth larger than what your hands can add. That's the moment your dollars become coworkers. Before that point, you are the engine and the portfolio is the passenger. After that point, the portfolio is the engine and you are the driver who sets the route. This is why we talk about the first 100,000 as a wall. On one side, sweat fuels everything. On the other, momentum does. And the distance between those two worlds is not moral courage or genetic luck. It's a series of mechanical choices that thicken your base until the math helps you instead of humiliates you. To get there, we have to address 3 friction points that quietly keep people in the dead zone. The first is thin cash flow, where lifestyle creep chews up raises and your savings rate flatlines. The second is fee drag, where 1% in invisible costs lowers your effective return year after year, often enough to erase entire months of contributions over the long run. The third is emotional pacing, where you expect linear progress in a system that pays in plateaus and leaps. If you've ever looked at your account and thought, all this for a few $100s, understand that what you're building is not the few $100s. It's the capacity for thousands of dollars to show up without your permission later. When that capacity is small, it offends your patience. When it's large, it rewards your consistency and punishes the version of you that almost gave up. So let's change the pace by changing the mechanics. Imagine your journey in 3 phases. In the 0 to 20,000 phase, we build discipline and foundation. In the 20K to 60K phase, we press income and efficiency. In the 60,000 to 100,000 phase, we shave friction and lock systems so compounding can finally breathe. If you're already nodding because you can feel which phase you're in, tell me in the comments. I read them and I reply, because that context helps me keep making tools that fit your phase, not the internet's phase. In the first phase, your single job is to prove to yourself that you can automate the difference between wanting to save and actually saving. The rule of thumb that works in the real world is simple. Pay yourself first at a baseline using the 50-30-20 frame. Then raise that savings percentage by 1 point each quarter. You won't feel 1%, but your future will. People obsess over the perfect index fund and ignore the uncomfortable truth that a 2% swing in savings rate often beats a 2% swing in annual performance over the early years. You can use any beginner-friendly, low-cost index fund to start. But the habit we're installing is more important. Automatic contributions that hit the account the day after you get paid. not the day you remember. Automation protects your future from your present self on a tiring day. There's a mental reframe I need from you in this first phase. You are not trying to be impressive. You're trying to be inevitable. What's impressive burns out. What's inevitable compounds. If you've ever tried to jump from saving 5% to saving 20% in a single month, you already learned that exertion can't beat friction for long. The 1% per quarter gets you there with almost no pain. And because the base is still small, the right move is to ignore micro-volatility. If a red month erases what you added, that is not evidence that investing doesn't work. It's evidence that your base is not yet heavy enough to swing the knife the other way, which is exactly why we're focused on thickening the base. As you move toward the second phase, something shifts. $20,000 is not a magic number, but it's a psychological threshold. At that level, a modest market year suddenly throws off a few $1,000s that you didn't directly earn. And your brain finally has a chance to believe the story you've been telling it. This is where we stop treating income like a constant. You can only cut so far, but you can grow beyond anything. If you've been stuck at the same savings percentage because every raise seems to disappear into convenience, calendar your raises now. The month you get one, increase your auto invest by the same dollar amount before you touch a single lifestyle choice. The second lever is negotiation. If you haven't asked for a raise in the last 12 months, add a reminder tonight and comment "raise scheduled" so I know to send you my prep script. The third lever is skill stacking. One new skill that raises your hourly rate by $10 compounded across a year can be the entire gap between you and the 60,000 line in this phase. Let's talk allocation without turning this into a finance exam. A simple, low-drama mix will carry you. 70% in a broad stock index, 20% in bonds for ballast, and 10% as a cash buffer to keep you from selling in a storm. Could you build something more intricate? Yes. Do you need to before 100,000? No. Remember the priority. Make consistency easy and fees low. At this stage, your worst enemy is not under-optimization, it's breaking the habit. So set a rebalancing reminder twice a year. If the market has pushed your stocks far beyond 70%, trim back. If fear has you accumulating too much cash, nudge it to work. The rule is, your plan should be boring enough that you actually follow it, and simple enough that you can teach it to a friend in an elevator. Now we're entering the third phase, and this is where your patience finally earns interest. 60,000 to 100,000 is the stretch where people either sprint or stall. The stall happens because complacency sneaks in. The account looks respectable, you relax the systems, and you give back momentum in 1,000 harmless decisions. The sprint happens when you remove the last sources of drag. Start with fees. A 1% advisory or fund cost does not look monstrous on paper, but over a couple of decades, it can cost you 6 figures. Even in the shorter run, between 60 and 100,000, it can delay your milestone by years. Switching to low-cost index funds, asking 5 blunt questions of any advisor, and refusing to pay for churn will feel like minor maintenance and will behave like major upgrades. The next removal is tax friction. If you have access to tax-advantaged accounts, plug them into the system. If you don't, or once you've maxed them, a plain taxable account with disciplined behavior still wins, because behavior is the ultimate tax shelter. At some point in this last stretch, you'll open your account and notice something new. The growth column for the year is bigger than the total you contributed, and there is nothing to celebrate about you, except that you didn't flinch. That's the turn. That's the inflection we've been aiming for. Before that turn, your effort dwarfs your outcome, and the market's noise bullies your emotions. After that turn, your outcome begins to dwarf your effort, and the market's noise gets demoted from bully to background. I want you to anchor this image because it will inoculate you against boredom. If you're watching this and you're thinking, "I've been stuck in the dead zone for years," say it out loud in the comments. I need change. Tell me where you are, and I'll point you to the exact video that pairs with your phase, and I'll pin the $0 and $10 to 100K roadmap so you don't have to guess. Let's give the math some skin. Two people on similar incomes start at the same time. One sprints for 3 months, then burns out, then restarts, then stops, chasing the perfect strategy. The other automates, raises the savings rate by 1% each quarter, ignores volatility, and keeps fees low. 10 quarters later, the second person has quietly pushed their savings rate into the high teens, and their base is heavy enough that a good year shows them more money from growth than from effort for the first time. That moment changes their identity. Not because the number is huge, but because the ratio flipped. Once you see your money pay you more than you paid it, you struggle to go back to the old story. Behavior becomes addictive in the right direction. I want you to experience that flip sooner. So here's how we compress the timeline without pretending. First, add friction to the wrong behavior and remove friction from the right one. If impulse spending kicks you off track, create a 24-hour rule that forces every purchase above a threshold to sit in a cooling cart. If manual investing lets procrastination win, make your contributions automatic and invisible. Second, calendar a 5-minute money meeting every payday. No dashboards, no podcasts, no noise. Just a quick check that your transfers hit, your allocation is on course, and your savings rate is inching up this quarter. Third, tie your identity to the process, not the milestone. When someone asks how it's going, don't say, I'm trying to reach 100,000. Say, I raise my savings rate by 1% every quarter. That sentence builds you, even on the days the line on the chart is flat. There will be a month when the market drops and erases what you added. On that day, remind yourself that you're being paid in base building. There will be a month when a raise arrives and your brain whispers, you deserve something. On that day, choose to treat yourself to speed. Move the raise into your auto invest first, and then enjoy the leftovers. There will be a month when a friend brags about a trade that doubled and you feel slow. On that day, recall that you're not building excitement, you're building inevitability. Excitement spikes, inevitability compounds. As your base crosses the line and the account ticks over 100,000, I want you to recognize what changed and what didn't. What changed is the power balance between contributions and growth. What didn't change is the behavior that got you there. Keep the same automation, the same semi-annual rebalance, the same fee vigilance, and the same 1% quarterly nudge until the numbers become hilariously lopsided in your favor. Then teach someone behind you to do the same. The fastest way to stay consistent is to become the person other people ask for help. Responsibility is glue. If this resonates, lock it in by writing I'll hit 100K below. I'll pin the $0 to 100K checklist and send you the $100 ladder calculator so you can see your timeline with your real numbers. And if you're between phases right now and you want my eyes on your plan, drop your phase in the comments and tell me the single obstacle that keeps tripping you. I read every story because this channel exists to turn vague motivation into specific mechanics for real people with real lives. You don't have to be impressive to cross 100,000. You have to be inevitable. Automate the difference. Raise it by 1% a quarter. Keep fees low. Let the market do the heavy lifting once your base is heavy enough. The first part is brutally hard, and that's okay. Hard is not a verdict, it's a filter. Step through it, and you'll discover what everyone who crosses this line discovers. The next part is surprisingly easy. Not because you changed, but because the math finally started pulling with you instead of against you. This is Richie Returns, and if you want the next step after 100,000, where to invest next, how to diversify without diluting returns, and how to make your plan stormproof, subscribe now, turn on notifications, and I'll meet you in the next video with your momentum already in motion.